Okay, so we have just discussed that how a plaint is presented or how a suit is instituted under section 26 and order 4 of your CPC. Okay, now the explanation uses the term pendency of a suit or proceeding shall be deemed to commence from the date of the presentation. So another point which you have to remember is that as far as the presentation of the plaint or the institution of the proceeding is concerned, things will not suffice by merely presenting the plaint or by instituting a suit. The important point is that that respective plaint which you have presented or the suit which is instituted, that must also be accepted by the court. So if that respective plaint which you have presented is not accepted by the court, or the suit which you have instituted is not accepted by the court, then this particular section 52 will not at all be applicable, because here it uses the term that it will commence from the date of the presentation of the plaint or the institution of the proceeding. So another point which you have to remember, that as far as presentation is concerned, first thing is that by mere presenting things will not suffice, it must also be accepted by the court. Okay, so the point which you have to remember, let me just tell you. Yes, okay, the next point is with respect to jurisdiction. So the moment you are presenting a plaint or you are instituting a suit, it should be presented in a court who is having a jurisdiction. This we have already discussed in the class, that as far as jurisdiction is concerned, in our CPC, the jurisdiction is divided on the basis of a pecuniary jurisdiction or a territorial jurisdiction. Pecuniary means with respect to money, and mean the value of that respective property, which will determine, and territorial means the area. So I'm not once again not going into the details, because this is not the part of your syllabus, and I guess with a very small example we have already discussed in the class, right? So the point is that if someone has presented a plaint or someone has instituted a suit in a court where the jurisdiction is not there, then again it will not be considered as the presentation of the plaint. So obviously this question should come into your mind, that if you have presented a plaint or you have instituted a suit in a court is having no jurisdiction, then what is the step which the court is going to take? So the step which the court is going to take is that the court will return that respective plaint and will ask the plaintiff to file that respective file that respective plaint in a proper court. So the moment that that particular uh, plaint is presented in a proper court, from that day onwards it will be deemed that there is a presentation of the plaint or the institution of the suit, and then only section 52 will be applicable, not before that particular stage. Now today I have filed a plaint, or I have presented a plaint, or I have instituted a suit in a court was having no jurisdiction, and that particular plaint is returned back to me. For example, let's take a date. Today is I guess 27th, whatever, 20. Let's presume it is 27th of March. So today I have presented. On 29th, the court had returned me the this plaint by saying that we do not have the jurisdiction to entertain this respective plaint, or to file this respective suit. So I was thinking that okay, after 10 that okay, let this that after 10 days I'll can find, I can once again file the this particular this suit or the uh, plaint in a proper court. So there is a interval 27th, and there's a gap of 10 to 15 days. So if during that gap, during that interval, if one of the parties if that parties transfers the property to some third person, then in that interval or during that interval period, if any transaction took place, then on that period the concept of lis pendens will not at all be applicable. So this is the second point which you have to remember. Now the next point which I want to discuss here is about the insufficient court fees. Yes, so the point is, now insufficient court fees. So before you understand insufficient court fees, you need to understand that what is a court fee. See, this, I think this again I have discussed in the class. So let me once again tell you. Now as far as suit is concerned, or a plaint is concerned, the moment you file a plaint, you need to pay the court fee also, right, to the court itself. So how to calculate the court fees? So who's going to calculate? So the parameters in order to decide that what should be the court fee, it depends upon the subject matter. So that means it depends upon the value of the property. So according to the value of the property, the person who's filing the plaint, that person has to actually pay the court fee itself. So if you have filed a plaint, you have presented a plaint, or you have instituted a suit, and the court fee which you have actually fixed, that is insufficient, then again the question arises here that what the court will do. Obviously the court will return the that respective suit or the plaint, and will give you the direction that you first pay the sufficient court fee, then only the court will entertain that respective matter. So the point is, the moment it is returned back, and once again you have presented by fixing the proper court fee to the in before the court, from that day only it will be considered as if that you have presented the plaint or you have instituted the suit. Not before that particular date. The earlier date will not be considered, it will not be counted. So that means doctrine of lis pendens will not at all be applicable. Okay, so this was the another point which I have to discuss. Then next point, which is again important, is about the forma pauperis, or you can say indigent person. I think this term we have discussed in the class, and most of you must be knowing it, but let me just tell you once again in a very brief manner. Indigent person, that means a person who is not in a position, he's not financially capable to pay the court fee, so he's called as an indigent person. So if you talk about CPC, in our CPC it is mentioned under order number 33, so that you can see yourself. I will not be going into the details because this is again not a CPC class, it's a TPA class going on. Okay, so forma pauperis or indigent person, so the person who is not in a position to pay the court fee. So for example, today I have filed an application before a court, and in that particular application I have asked the court to permit me or to declare it me as a forma pauperis. So the moment the court will declare me that I am a forma pauperis or I am an indigent person, then like today I have actually presented the application that please declare me as a forma pauperis or declare me as an indigent person. So the moment that particular application is accepted by the court, then only it will be considered that as if you have presented the plaint or you have instituted the suit. Now there might be a situation that the court rejects that respective application which you have presented. Then again, section 52 will not at all be applicable, because it will not be deemed that as if you have instituted a suit or you have presented a plaint. So this is another point which you have to remember. Then the next point which you have to remember with respect to the commencement. Okay, so we are done with this commencement point. Now another area which is important under the explanation is the term continuation, that means termination. So before I'll discuss that area, let me once again read the explanation It says for the purposes of this section, dependency of a suit or a proceeding shall, so mandatory, shall be deemed to commence, and I will be reading very slowly now so that you can correlate whatever we have just discussed, shall be deemed to commence from the date of the presentation of the plaint. So it will start, or the institution of the proceeding in a court of competent jurisdiction. So please mark this term, this particular word, competent jurisdiction. So whatever we have just discussed, it is related with this term, competent jurisdiction. And means both the criterias are important for essential ingredient number one. And to continue until the suit or the proceeding has been disposed of by a final decree or order, and complete satisfaction or discharge of such decree or order has been obtained or has become unobtainable by reason of the expiration of any period of limitation prescribed for the execution thereof by any law for the time being in force. So put an arrow and write that by any law for the time being in force, they're talking about the law of the limitation. Then they're talking about the time bar. That means the limitation period has expired. Okay, so now we have to discuss with the last portion of the explanation. So if you remember, that explanation is with respect to the essential ingredient number one.